It's the Renaissance, baby! Oh wait, this is actually Casual History with Brenna, and I'm your historian Brenna, obviously. Today, we're going to Italy. Florence, Italy. The Renaissance is in full swing. The Medici family and the church, that's capital C church, are funding art projects like it's nobody's business. Is it some sort of game between them to see who can fund more frescoes? No, it's a way for two powerful entities to influence public opinion. In order to commission art pieces, you need money, duh. So how did the Medici family get so rich? In the medieval era, they were wool merchants, and eventually they became bankers. Now, bankers weren't exclusively wealthy, as the church outlawed charging high interest rates, aka usury. The Medici family skirted the law, as the church allowed them to accept gifts or tips from patrons. It was basically charging interest, but since they called it something else, it was okay. The Medici family also became the primary banker to the Pope, which granted them great wealth and power in Florence and most of Italy. They also had a lot of sway in the Florentine government, but Renaissance politics are complicated, so maybe we'll get into that in another video. First, we're going to talk about frescoes. Fresco is just a fancy word for painting, and these ones were painted on a wall or a ceiling, specifically. Both the Medici family and the church displayed frescoes during the Renaissance. However, they both had their own reasons for doing so. Today, we're going to look at the Procession of the Magi, painted by Benozzo Gozzoli. This was a fresco commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici in the 1450s for the family's private chapel. It's a religious scene of the Magi, aka three wise men, as you may know, on their way to see Jesus. However, the Magi in this painting are members of the Medici family, Cosimo, Piero, and Lorenzo de' Medici. But why? They obviously weren't actually around when Jesus was born. Well, religion was a huge deal in Renaissance Italy. By inserting yourself into a painting like this, you were seen as worthy and influential enough to be associated with religious iconography and events. It was a way for the Medici to legitimize their status as a powerful family in Florence. Think of it as a power move to show everyone that they were the top dogs. They could invite over influential people and be like, hey, look at this fresco. Oh, look, that's me on my way to see Jesus. No big deal. Except it was. On the side of the church, we're going to look at The Last Judgment, painted by Gregorio Vasari and completed by Federico Zuccari. This was painted on the ceiling of the dome of the Florence Cathedral. Now, this fresco was actually financially backed by a Medici, Cosimo I, but it wasn't for the Medici family, it was for the church. This fresco showcased scenes depicting saints, angels, Jesus, hell, etc. Now, while the Medici family didn't have say in what was painted in this fresco, Zuccari did add in his Medici patrons, but he also painted in himself, the King of France, and others to honor those who supported and donated to his work. It didn't add anything to the Medici's growing influence, though. It was more like just for fun. Just a little nod to those who were backing the project. Regardless, the purpose of this fresco was vastly different from that of the Medici fresco we discussed. While they both featured religious imagery, the church fresco was created to help educate the public. Many citizens at the time could not read, so a painting was a great way for them to see and connect with the biblical stories they had been taught. The Medici fresco helped legitimize the family, but biblical figures were already pretty legitimate in the eyes of Florentines, so the church didn't need to do that. It did help elevate the status of the church. People like to look at beautiful things, and this fresco was meant to be viewed by everyone, meant to be shared. It was communal. The Medici fresco, on the other hand, was for personal, private viewing only. Moving away from frescoes, let's talk about some Medici versus church sculptures. Funnily enough, both the church and the Medici family chose the same subject for a sculpture, which makes this comparison even easier. David, a prominent figure from the Bible, became a symbol of Florence and its Republican triumph over oligarchy. So the sculptures we will be looking at are Donatello's David in bronze and the famous David sculpted in marble by Michelangelo. Donatello's David in bronze was likely commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici, as the Medici family received the finished piece. It was created sometime between the 1440s and the 1460s. This sculpture was very controversial at the time. It was the first freestanding nude sculpture since ancient times, save for the boots and a hat. It's also quite feminine. David has long hair, a hand on his hip. Some thought it was mocking Florence since David was a symbol of the city. This sculpture was also unusual because it showed a young David, while many other depictions at the time showed David as an adult. This sculpture showed David after he defeated Goliath, with David standing on Goliath's head. An inscription on this sculpture reads, "The victor is whoever defends the fatherland. God crushes the wrath of an enormous foe. Behold, "A boy overcame a great tyrant. Conquer, O citizens." From this quote, we can conclude that the Medici family used this piece as a way to adopt David as a symbol for themselves as defenders of their city. It was another way for them to show off their status and help legitimize themselves within Florence. Similar to their fresco, this was also a personal piece. It was not shared with the public, but could be viewed by other powerful individuals that the Medici invited into their home. Let's move on to Michelangelo's David. This sculpture was created decades after Donatello's, between 1501 and 1504, and it was commissioned by the Opera del Duomo, or Florence Cathedral Works. This showed David as a young adult, which was a more typical depiction at the time. It also showed David before he fought Goliath in deep contemplation. While the Medici sculpture was placed in their home, this one was meant to be placed up on the side of the Florence Cathedral, so it is massive. It's 17 feet tall. Some sources say it was too heavy to get up that high, and others say it was too beautiful to put up that high. Regardless, it was placed in the Piazza del Signoria to be admired by all. This sculpture was meant to be shared with the public as a symbol of the city. It's not exclusive like the Medici sculpture. So why did the church and the Medici family need power and influence? The church used art to keep people invested. If people can't understand and connect with the stories they are told, why would they stick around and support the church? For the Medici family, it was even more crucial. Political turmoil was a daily occurrence during the Renaissance. Political figures, kings, and powerful families constantly vied for influence and control in their respective domains. Exile was incredibly common for a political enemy who lost influence. Long-term imprisonment was rare, and execution was viewed as unfair, cruel, and vindictive. Public opinion generally wouldn't allow it. Still, assassination plots did sometimes happen, so power had to be secured. In 1433, Cosimo de' Medici was arrested by his rivals. He, his family, and their close associates were exiled from Florence. When he returned in 1434, he needed to seize power and hold onto it. His patronage of the arts received high praise. Florentines wrote about how his funding of the arts bettered Florence. For them, art became a means of protective influence. It could be used to garner support and positively influence public opinion. So what can we conclude from all of this? Well, both the church and the Medici family funded and received art with religious themes, but they used the art for different reasons. The church used art to help those who could not read Bible stories learn about and connect with those stories. The Medici family used art as a way to legitimize their rule and hold on to power during a time of intense political instability. You might think, it seems selfish of the Medici family to use art to gain power and influence while the church used it to help the everyday citizens of Florence. I don't think so. The Renaissance was a politically tense time in history. Nobody was ever really safe. This was also a time when family units, especially powerful ones, were very protective of their own. Family was everything. The Medici, sure, maybe they were a bit power hungry, but they had powerful rivals. They had to do something to stay in the good graces of the people. Public opinion could make or break a family. And remember, Florence was a republic, so people could gain or lose power based on whether or not they had the support of others. Anyway, I'm not trying to say whether the church or the Medici family is better or worse than the other. They just had different reasons for using art the way they did. I hope you learned something today. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time on Casual History with Brenna. Bye!